All right, let's talk about a book that didn't just join a conversation, it basically blew the whole thing up and started a brand new one. We're going to dive into William James's 1902 masterpiece, The Varieties of Religious Experience, a book that just completely shattered a debate that was totally stuck.
So at the turn of the 20th century, this was pretty much it. This was the whole debate. When you talked about religious experience, you basically had two teams dug into their trenches, just lobbing arguments at each other with, let's be honest, zero hope of ever finding common ground.
On one side, you had what they called medical materialism. Now, these folks saw faith as a kind of illness, something you could diagnose. Having a profound religious vision? Oh, that's just a problem in your brain. That feeling of mystical oneness with the universe? Probably just hysteria, or as one doctor actually suggested, a disordered colon. Now, I'm not kidding, they were trying to explain faith away as just a glitch in the system. And on the other side, you had dogmatic theology. They argued that faith was a sacred message, period. It was totally off limits to any kind of scientific analysis. For them, St. Paula wasn't an epileptic. He was a messenger. St. Teresa wasn't an hysteric. She was a saint. End of story. So you see the problem, right? The choice was either disease or miracle. There was literally no other option on the table.
So, into this complete intellectual gridlock steps William James, who was both a philosopher and a psychologist. And he had this incredible insight. Both sides were trapped because they were asking the completely wrong question. They were all obsessed with the origins of belief. Where does it come from? James saw that was a fight nobody could ever win, so he came up with a totally brilliant way out.
James was one of the big champions of a philosophy called pragmatism. And the core idea here is really powerful. It says the truth or the meaning of an idea isn't in some abstract theory about where it came from, but in the actual, real-world difference it makes in your life. He basically said, let's just stop guessing about the roots of a religious belief.
Instead, he insisted we have to look at the results, the fruits that a belief produces in a person's life. Now, what's so revolutionary here is that this just changes the entire game. Does a belief make a person more hopeful, more courageous? Does it give their life meaning? For James, that was the real test of whether it was worthwhile.
This simple metaphor, fruits not roots, became the key to his entire investigation. It's like, forget about arguing whether the seed was planted by God or by a neurological hiccup. Let's just look at the tree that grew. Is the fruit it produces good? This whole approach let him sidestep all those dead-end arguments and actually study religious experience for what it is, a very real, very human thing.
So, with this new toolkit, James started collecting hundreds and hundreds of personal stories about religious life. But, and this was totally radical back then, he didn't organize them by religion, like Catholic or Buddhist. No, he sorted them by psychological type. And by doing that, he found that there were two main paths people take. First, you've got what he called the healthy-minded. These are the once-born folks, the people who are just naturally optimistic. They tend to see the world as a fundamentally good place. For them, faith isn't some big struggle. It just feels natural, like they're already in sync with how the universe works. But then you have the sick soul, and this person feels the world's pain, all its brokenness and evil, right down to their bones. Their journey to faith is almost never easy. It usually involves some kind of huge crisis, a real dark night of the soul that leads to a massive life-changing conversion. They have to be, as he put it, twice born, going through a kind of death and rebirth to find any real hope.
Now, James didn't say one of these paths was better than the other. Not at all. He just applied his pragmatic test. He looked at the fruits, the results, from both the sunny, healthy-minded person and the intense, twice-born sick soul. And from that, he came to this incredible conclusion about what it even means for a belief to be true.
What he basically concluded was this. If a belief, and it doesn't matter where it came from, helps a person live a better, more meaningful, more powerful life, if it gives them peace and purpose and strength, then for that person, it is true. And it's true in the only way that actually matters. See, for James, truth wasn't some abstract fact floating out there in space. It was something you lived.
And here's the really crucial part. This wasn't just some dusty idea that stayed in a philosophy book. No way. It broke out into the real world and completely changed how we talk about psychology, spirituality, and that whole human search for meaning. And you can just see his impact everywhere. The people who started Alcoholics Anonymous, they leaned heavily on James's idea of focusing on a practical, spiritual experience, not on religious rules.
The whole humanistic psychology movement of the 60s was built on his deep respect for a person's own experience. And honestly, the entire modern spiritual but not religious idea, that's basically William James's philosophy in action. It's all about judging a belief by its fruits, not by its roots.
So in the end, James doesn't give us some grand answer about God. Instead, he kind of hands the tools of his investigation over to us. He leaves us with this really powerful question, turning his big philosophical project into something deeply personal. And he asks us, what are the real-world effects of the things that we believe to be true?
This is for entertainment and educational purposes only.